The Iron Sentinel by Johnson Davies. Chapter 1. The Iron Sentinel arrives. The stars above Eloria shimmered like ancient runes, silent witnesses to the chaos unfolding below. Captain Bradley Manning stood at the helm of his battlecruiser, encased in his signature cybernetic armor, sleek, obsidian, and pulsing with AI-guided telemetry. To the Galactic Federation, he was the Iron Sentinel. To his enemies, he was the end. Planetfall in 60 seconds, his onboard AI intoned. Hostile forces confirmed. Civilian extraction priority 1. Bradley's eyes scanned the tactical overlay. The alien force, known as the Karzul, had breached the planetary perimeter, targeting population centers with surgical precision. But their true objective was far more sinister: the abduction of children under the age of 5, genetic extinction disguised as conquest. "Deploy the unit," Bradley ordered. "Full armor sync." No civilian casualties. His elite squad, 20 armored warriors known as the Black Halo, launched from orbit like falling gods, their descent marked by streaks of fire and sonic thunder. Bradley followed, his cruiser's hull splitting open as he dropped into the atmosphere, a meteor of vengeance. The moment his boots hit Elorian soil, the ground trembled. He activated his pulse shield and scanned the chaos: burning building, fleeing families, and the distant screech of Karzul skimmers. Then he saw her. A woman with white hair like woven starlight, clutching a child to her chest, running through the ash-streaked streets. Her eyes met his, wide, defiant, and desperate. "Help us!" she cried, voice raw with fear. Bradley moved without hesitation. His armor surged forward, intercepting a Karzul drone mid-flight and crushing it with a single blow. He reached the woman and her child, shielding them with his body as plasma fire rained down. "Get behind me," he said, voice modulated but firm. She hesitated, then nodded. "They're taking the children. All of them." "Not this one," Bradley growled. "Not while I'm breathing." As his squad pushed back the invaders, Bradley ushered the woman and her son into his personal cruiser, sealing them inside with encrypted protocols. The AI scanned her identity. "Princess Elira of House Tyrell," it confirmed. "Child, crown heir Sarlion." Bradley's jaw tightened. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a political flashpoint. The royal bloodline was under siege, and the Federation's most feared soldier had just become its guardian. Outside, the battle raged. Inside, a bond had begun to form. Chapter 2. The Beautiful Stranger. The cruiser's interior hummed with quiet power, its walls lined with reinforced alloy and soft ambient lighting. Princess Elira sat in the corner, her arms wrapped protectively around her son. The child, Sarlion, slept fitfully, his small face streaked with ash and tears. Bradley removed his helmet, revealing a face carved by war and solitude. His eyes, steel gray and unreadable, softened as he approached. "You're safe here," he said, voice low. Elira looked up, her white hair cascading over her shoulders like moonlight. "Safe is a relative term, Captain. They won't stop. Not until every child is taken." Bradley crouched beside her, scanning the child. "Why the children?" "They believe the royal bloodline carries something ancient. A genetic key. My father's alliance with the Federation made us a target. They think, if they erase the future heirs, they erase our future." Bradley's jaw clenched. "And you?" "You're the princess," she nodded her head. "Widowed. My husband died defending our borders last cycle. I will never be the queen. Sarlion is the heir now." The cruiser jolted as distant explosions echoed across the valley. Bradley stood and activated the tactical display. His unit was engaged in 3 sectors, pushing back the Karzul with brutal efficiency. But the enemy was adapting. "They're shifting tactics," he muttered, "targeting evacuation routes, hurting civilians." Elira rose, her gaze steady. "You need to be out there." "I will be," he said, "but I don't leave civilians behind, especially not royalty." She studied him. "You're not what I expected." "Most people expect me to be a machine," Bradley replied. "The armor helps." "No," she said softly. "I expected a soldier, not someone who listens." Bradley paused. Something in her voice, worn but resolute, cut through the static of war. He turned back to her. "I've seen too many worlds burn," he said. "Too many children lost. If I can stop it here, I will." Elira stepped closer. "Then let me help. I know this planet, its terrain, its people. You'll need more than firepower." Bradley considered her. "You're a civilian, a target." "I'm a mother," she said, "and I won't hide while others fight for my son's future." A moment passed between them, charged, silent, undeniable. Then Bradley nodded. "Stay here. I'll reroute the cruiser to a secure zone. When I return, we'll plan." His helmet automatically formed in place, and he stepped into the storm once more, the Iron Sentinel reborn in fire and resolve. Behind him, Elira watched, not as a princess, but as a woman who had just glimpsed the man beneath the armor. And for the first time, Bradley felt the weight of something more than duty. Chapter 3. Children of the Crown. The sky over Eloria burned violet and gold, torn by the shriek of plasma fire and the roar of alien drop cruisers. Bradley Manning, Iron Sentinel, descended into Sector 7, where the Karzul had begun their most aggressive assault. His boots slammed into the scorched earth, seismic shock waves rippling outward. His armor locked into combat mode, AI systems syncing with his squad across the battlefield. "Black Halo, converge," he ordered. "No mercy, no retreat." The Karzul came in waves, six-limbed brutes with jagged exosuits and neural-linked rifles. They moved like a hive, coordinated and relentless. But Bradley's unit was forged for this. Each warrior was a living weapon, encased in cybernetic armor that turned flesh into fury. Sergeant Hart tore through the first line with a shock lance, impaling two Karzul and detonating their suits mid-scream. Lieutenant Richards vaulted over a burning transport, unleashing a barrage of micromissiles that shredded enemy ranks into molten shards. Bradley surged forward, his pulse blade igniting with a howl. He carved through the enemy like a storm given form, limbs severed, armor split, alien blood hissing against his plating. One Karzul commander lunged at him with a fusion axe. Bradley caught the weapon mid-swing, twisted, and drove his blade through the creature's chest. It shrieked, then fell silent. "The children are being moved," his AI reported. "Coordinates locked. Mobile extraction units en route." Bradley turned to his squad. "We breach the convoy. No child dies today." They advanced through the ruins of a school, walls scorched, toys melted into slag. A group of terrified children huddled beneath a collapsed beam. Bradley lifted it with one arm, shielding them as his team secured the perimeter. "The Iron Sentinel," one child whispered. "Are you real?" Bradley knelt. "I am. And you're going home." A Karzul dropship screamed overhead, deploying a new wave of elite hunters. These were faster, smarter, equipped with adaptive cloaking and neural disruptors. One targeted Bradley, firing a bolt that shorted his left arm. He staggered, then recalibrated, rerouting power through his spinal core. "Override," he growled. "Engage Berserker Protocol." His armor flared crimson. Time slowed. He launched into the air, crashing into the dropship's hull, tearing through its plating with bare hands. He reached the control core and crushed it, sending the vessel spiraling into the mountainside in a fireball of vengeance. Below, his squad rallied. The children were loaded into evacuation pods. The Karzul retreated, broken and bleeding. Bradley stood atop the wreckage, armor scorched, breath ragged. His eyes scanned the horizon. Victory was theirs. For now. Back aboard his cruiser, Elira watched the battle unfold through the tactical feed. Her hand trembled as she touched the screen. "He's not just a soldier," she whispered. "He's a force of nature." And somewhere deep within the Iron Sentinel's heart, a flicker of something ancient stirred. Not rage, not duty. Hope. Chapter 4. The Siege of Eloria. The Karzul regrouped at the edge of the capital, their warships blotting out the sun like a swarm of locusts. Eloria's last bastion, Citadel Tyrell, stood defiant, its crystalline towers gleaming against the smoke-choked sky. Inside, the royal archives burned. Outside, the Iron Sentinel prepared for war. Bradley Manning stood atop the command ridge, armor scorched, pulse blade humming. His squad, Black Halo, was down to 8. The rest had fallen during the child extractions, their names etched into his HUD like sacred runes. "Enemy forces massing at the eastern gate," his AI reported. "Estimated breach in 12 minutes. "Then we hold," Bradley said. "No retreat. No surrender." He turned to Elira, who had insisted on joining the defense. She wore a tactical cloak over ceremonial robes, her eyes fierce with purpose. "You should be with your son," Bradley said. "I am," she replied. "Every child here is Sar Lion. Every life is my responsibility." Bradley nodded. "Then stay close and stay behind me." The first wave hit like a tidal surge, Karzul berserkers with plasma mauls and gravity grenades. The eastern gate exploded inward, sending shards of crystal and bone into the defenders. Bradley charged into the breach, his blade cleaving through armor and flesh. He moved like a phantom, unstoppable, unyielding. One Karzul brute tackled him, driving him into the wall. Bradley's armor cracked. He activated his shock core, sending a pulse through the creature's skull. It convulsed, then collapsed. "Heart! Flank left!" he shouted. "Richards, cover the medics!" Elira ducked behind a fallen column, dragging a wounded child to safety. Her hands trembled, but her resolve never wavered. Bradley saw her, blood on her robes, fire in her eyes, and something inside him shifted. She wasn't just a royal, she was a warrior, a mother, a flame in the dark. The battle raged for hours. The citadel's walls fell. The defenders were pushed to the inner sanctum. Bradley's armor was failing, systems overloaded, power cells drained, but he kept fighting. Then came the Karzul Prime, a towering monstrosity with a crown of bone and a voice like thunder. "You are the Iron Sentinel," it said. "You bleed, you break, you die." Bradley stepped forward, blade raised. "I protect. I endure. I win." They clashed in a storm of fury, blade against claw, armor against rage. Bradley was thrown, crushed, stabbed. But he rose each time, driven by something deeper than duty. Elira watched, tears streaming. "You're more than metal," she whispered. "Your heart." With a final surge, Bradley drove his blade into the Prime's core. It screamed, then detonated, taking half the citadel with it. Silence fell, smoke drifted, children cried, and the Iron Sentinel stood, broken but alive. Elira ran to him, cradling his shattered frame. "You saved them," she said. Bradley looked at her, bloodied and breathless. "I saved you." And in that moment, amid ruins and ash, something sacred passed between them. Not just survival. Connection. Chapter 5. Battle Protocols and Broken Hearts. The Ruins of Citadel. Tyrell smoldered under a blood-orange sky. Smoke curled from shattered towers, and the scent of scorched alloy and alien ichor hung heavy in the air. The Karzul Prime was dead. The siege was broken. But victory had come at a cost. Bradley Manning limped through the wreckage, his armor cracked and sparking, his pulse blade dim. His internal diagnostics flashed red across his HUD, fractured servos, depleted core, neural lag. But he ignored them. He was searching. "Hart," he called through comms. "Richards." "Respond." Static. He found Hart's body beneath a collapsed turret, armor caved in, helmet shattered. Richards was nearby, her chest plate melted, her hand still clutching a child's evac beacon. Bradley knelt beside them, silent. He tapped his wrist console and initiated the honor protocol. Their names would be etched into the Sentinel archive, their deeds immortalized. Elira approached, her cloak torn, her face streaked with soot. She carried Sarlion in her arms, the boy asleep, unaware of the carnage around him. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Bradley didn't answer. He stared at the wreckage, at the broken bodies of his squad, at the children huddled in makeshift shelters. His armor had protected him, but it hadn't saved everyone. "You did more than anyone could," Elira said. "You stopped them." Bradley turned to her. "Not all of them." "Not soon enough." She stepped closer. "You're not a god, Bradley. You're a man, and you fought like 10,000. He looked at her then, really looked. Her eyes held grief, yes, but also fire. She had lost her husband, her home, her people, and yet she stood, unbowed. "I wasn't always this," he said quietly. "Before the armor, before the I was just a soldier, one who bled, one who broke." "And now?" she asked. "Now I'm a myth," he said bitterly, "and myths don't mourn." Elira reached out, her hand resting on the scorched plating of his chest. "Then let me remind you how." They stood there, surrounded by ash and silence, two survivors bound by loss and defiance. Sarlion stirred in her arms, his small hand reaching toward Bradley. The Iron Sentinel took it gently, his gauntlet folding back to reveal bare skin. The child smiled, and something inside Bradley cracked. Not his armor, but the wall he'd built around his heart. Chapter 6. The King's Gambit. The War Council convened in the shattered remains of Eloria's high chamber. Holograms flickered over cracked marble, displaying troop movements, casualty reports, and diplomatic transmissions from the Galactic Federation. Bradley Manning stood at the edge of the room, armor repaired but still scarred, watching the political theater unfold. King Tharion Tyrell, Elira's father, sat at the head of the table, his once regal robes now stitched with battlefield grime. His eyes, sharp and calculating, swept across the gathered commanders and envoys. "The Karzul assault was not random," Tharion said. "They targeted our heirs, our legacy, and they did so with knowledge only Federation insiders could possess." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Bradley's jaw tightened. "You're suggesting a leak?" he asked. "I'm suggesting betrayal," Tharion replied. "Our entry into the Federation fractured the system. Old allies turned hostile. New enemies emerged. Someone wants Eloria destabilized." Bradley stepped forward. "Then we find them, and we end it." Tharion studied him. "You've done more for this planet than any diplomat. But you're still Federation. Can I trust you when the knives turn inward?" Bradley met his gaze. "I don't serve politics. I serve people. Your daughter, her son, the children we saved. That's my allegiance." Elira watched from the shadows, her expression unreadable. She had heard the rumors, whispers that her father had made secret deals to secure Federation membership, that he had traded planetary sovereignty for protection. Now those choices were bleeding consequences. After the council adjourned, Bradley found her in the royal garden, what remained of it. Cracked fountains, scorched petals, and a single surviving blossom clinging to a vine. "You heard him," he said. "I did," she replied. "And I wonder if he regrets it." Bradley sat beside her. "Do you?" She hesitated. "I regret the cost, but not the hope. The Federation gave us a chance. You gave us a chance." Bradley looked at her, the woman who had pierced his armor with nothing but truth. "I wasn't supposed to care. That's what the armor's for." "And yet you do," she said softly. He reached out, brushing a strand of white hair from her face. "I care more than I should." Their hands touched, brief, electric, real. In the silence, the garden seemed to breathe again. Then a transmission crackled through Bradley's comms. A new threat, a deeper conspiracy. The war wasn't over, but something had changed. The Iron Sentinel had found something worth fighting for beyond politics and orders. Chapter 7. Armor and Intimacy. The battle cruiser drifted above Eloria's surface, cloaked and silent. Inside, Bradley Manning stood in the medbay, stripped of his armor for the first time in weeks. His body bore the marks of war, scars, bruises, cybernetic grafts, but his eyes held something new. Vulnerability. Elira entered quietly, Sarlion asleep in her quarters. She carried a flask of Elorian healing tea, its scent floral and sharp. She paused at the threshold, watching Bradley as he adjusted the neural ports along his spine. "You never take it off," she said. "Not unless I have to," he replied. "The armor's more than protection. It's silence. It keeps the ghosts out." She stepped closer, offering the tea. "And what if silence isn't what you need?" Bradley took the flask, his fingers brushing hers. "Then I'm not sure what I am." They sat together in the dim light, the hum of the cruiser a quiet heartbeat around them. Elira studied him, his face, his posture, the way he never fully relaxed. "You were human once," she said, "before the Sentinel." "I still am," he said, "but the Federation doesn't want humans. They want legends, symbols, weapons." "And what do you want?" Bradley hesitated. "I wanted to make a difference, to protect people, but somewhere along the way I stopped being a person." Elira reached out, her hand resting on his bare shoulder. "You saved my son. You saved my people. You saved me. That's not a weapon. That's a man." He looked at her, the woman who had seen through the myth, through the metal. "You make me remember." They sat in silence, the air between them charged and tender. Then Elira spoke, voice low. "There's something you should know. About Sarlion, about our bloodline." Bradley leaned in. "Go on." "Our lineage isn't just royal. It's ancient. The first kings of Eloria were chosen by something older than the Federation, a force that lives in the planet itself. Sarlion has begun to show signs, dreams, visions. The Karzul weren't just trying to erase a monarchy. They were trying to kill a prophecy." Bradley's pulse quickened. What kind of prophecy? That one day a child of Eloria would awaken the planet's core, and with it, reshape the stars. Bradley stood, the weight of her words settling over him like a new kind of armor. "Then they'll come again. Stronger, smarter." "Yes," Elira said, "and we'll need more than soldiers." Bradley looked at her, at the woman who had pierced his silence, and nodded. "Then I'll be more." And in that moment, the Iron Sentinel wasn't just a weapon. He was a father figure, a protector, a man rediscovering his heart. Chapter 8. The Bloodline War. The descent into Eloria's planetary core was not a journey of legend. It was a military necessity. Bradley Manning stood in the cruiser's war bay, armor sealed, Pulse Blade charged. The Karzul had gone dark, but Federation intelligence confirmed their next move. A full-scale assault on the subterranean vault, known as the Core. Not a sacred chamber, but a strategic bunker, a last-resort shelter built generations ago to protect Eloria's leadership and civilians during planetary collapse. Now it was the only place left to hide the children. Sarlion, less than a year old, slept in Elira's arms. His tiny breath fogged the glass of her protective visor. He was not a chosen one. He was a baby. Her baby. And that made him a target. "They're not after prophecy," Bradley said, voice hard. "They're after continuity. If they kill the heirs, they kill the future." Elira nodded, her grip tightening around Sarlion. "Then we make sure the future survives." The cruiser plunged into the lower strata, navigating seismic tunnels and abandoned mining shafts. The core was buried beneath kilometers of rock and reinforced alloy. It wasn't mystical. It was engineered. A fortress of steel and silence. But the Karzul had found a way in. Bradley's replacement squad deployed first, clearing the entry corridor with brutal efficiency. Plasma fire lit the dark. Screams echoed through the vents. The enemy had adapted, using stealth drones and neural disruptors to disable armor systems. "Pollard, flank left," Bradley barked. "Daniels, cover the evac route. No child dies today." Elira stayed behind the armored line, cradling Sarlion as explosions rocked the walls. She wasn't a warrior, but she was a mother, and she refused to let her son be taken. Bradley fought like a man possessed. His blade tore through exosuits and bone. He took hits, one to the shoulder, another to the leg. But he kept moving. Every step was a promise. No more children lost. They reached the core's central vault, sealing the blast doors behind them. Inside, dozens of children huddled in emergency pods. Medics worked frantically. The air was thick with fear. Bradley turned to Elira. "We hold here, no matter what." She looked at him, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "You're bleeding." "I'll bleed later." Outside, the Karzul launched their final assault. The walls shook. The lights flickered. Bradley stood at the front, armor cracked, blade ready. And when the breach came, he didn't hesitate. He fought for every scream, every sob, every child behind that door. He fought until the Karzul retreated, broken and burning. When it was over, he collapsed beside Elira, breath ragged, armor scorched. She touched his face. "You didn't just save Sarlion. You saved all of them." Bradley looked at the sleeping baby in her arms. "He's not a symbol. He's a child. And that's enough." In the silence of the core, surrounded by survivors, the Iron Sentinel found something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Chapter 9. Echoes in the Cruiser. The cruiser ascended slowly from Eloria's core, its hull scorched and its systems strained. Inside, the survivors huddled in silence, children wrapped in thermal blankets, medics tending to the wounded, and soldiers staring at the floor, haunted by what they'd seen. Bradley Manning sat alone in the command chamber, helmet off, armor cracked. His pulse blade lay on the table beside him, inert. He hadn't touched it since the last Karzul fell. Elira entered quietly, Sarlion asleep in her arms. The baby stirred, then settled, his tiny hand clutching the edge of her cloak. "He's been quiet," she said. Bradley nodded. "He's seen too much." "So have you." He looked at her, eyes hollow but alert. "I've seen worse." But this felt different. Elira sat across from him. Because it wasn't just war. It was children, families, legacy. Bradley leaned back, the metal of his armor groaning. "I used to think a legacy was a luxury, something people talked about when they weren't bleeding. And now," he hesitated, Now I think it's the only thing worth bleeding for." They sat in silence, the hum of the cruiser a soft rhythm beneath them. Outside, Iloria's surface came into view, scarred but still standing. The capital was in ruins, but the people were alive. The bloodline had survived. Elira reached out, her fingers brushing his. "You didn't just protect us. You stayed. You cared." Bradley looked down at her hand, then at Sarleon. "I didn't know I could." "You can," she said, "and you did." He closed his eyes, the weight of the past pressing against him. The names of his fallen squad echoed in his mind. Hart, Richards, the others. He would carry them forever. "I'm not a hero," he said. "No," Elira replied. "You're something rarer. You're human, and you chose to be." Bradley opened his eyes. "What happens now?" "We rebuild," she said. "We mourn. We lead. And maybe we live." He looked at her, the woman who had pierced his armor and held his heart. "With you?" She smiled, tired but true. "If you'll have me." Bradley reached for her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "Then let's start." And as the cruiser broke through the clouds, carrying survivors toward a fragile peace, the Iron Sentinel sat beside a mother and her child, not as a weapon, but as a man. Chapter 10. The Final Push. The cruiser touched down on the outskirts of Eloria's capital, where reconstruction had begun. The air still carried the scent of ash and ozone, but the streets were alive again. Engineers rebuilding power grids, medics tending to survivors, children playing in the rubble with laughter that defied the past. Bradley Manning stepped out in full armor, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. The Iron Sentinel had become more than a myth. He was a man who had stayed when others fled, fought when others faltered, loved when he thought he couldn't. Elira walked beside him, Sarlion cradled in her arms. The baby reached for Bradley's gauntlet, his tiny fingers curling around the metal. Bradley smiled, then disengaged the armor plating, letting Sarlion grasp his bare hand. The Federation envoy arrived that afternoon. Diplomats, analysts, and military strategists. They wanted debriefs, tactical reports, political leverage. Bradley gave them none of it. "I'm not here to justify your war," he said. "I'm here to protect what's left." Elira stood beside him, her voice calm but firm. "Eloria will rebuild on its own terms, not as a pawn, not as a prize." The envoy left with silence, and Bradley stayed. That night, under the fractured stars, Bradley and Elira sat on the edge of the old palace gardens. The flowers were gone, but the soil was rich. New seeds had been planted. "I never thought I'd see peace," Bradley said. "You didn't just see it," Elira replied. "You made it possible." He looked at her, the woman who had survived loss, led her people, and opened his heart. "I don't know what comes next." She leaned into him. "Then let's find out together." Epilogue. The Sentinel's Heart. 3 years later, the capital of Eloria gleamed with new life. The core had become a sanctuary, not of prophecy, but of memory. A place where survivors gathered, where children learned, where peace was nurtured. The traitors had all been unrooted and exiled to a forgotten moon. Bradley Manning walked through the halls without armor. His legend remained, but the myth had softened. He was no longer just the Iron Sentinel. He was now a father. Sarlion toddled beside him, clutching a toy cruiser. Elira watched from the garden, her smile radiant, her hair still white as starlight. They had built something, not just a home, but a future. Bradley joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "He's fast," he said, nodding at Sarlion. "He takes after you," she replied. "Of course he is." They stood together as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the rebuilt towers. No war, no armor, just two people who had survived the fire and chosen love. And in that quiet moment, the Iron Sentinel was finally at peace. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.